If the heart of a man is depressed with care, the mist is dispelled when a woman appears. Like the notes of a fiddle, she sweetly, sweetly raises the spirits and charms our ears. Roses and lilies her cheeks disclose, but her lips are more sweet than those. Press her, caress her, with blisses her kisses, dissolves us in pleasure and soft repose. Do you fancy a punk of a humour free that's kept by a fumbler of quality? You must rail at her keeper and tell her, pleasure's best charm is variety.
Well, good day to you. I'm schoolmaster. Come this day to provide you with an interview. This woman's a member of a canting crew. She would call me perhaps a phlebotomist. A phlebotomist because they think that I use a switch more than I use the books. But it is necessary to often use the switch. For spare the rod and spoil the child, as surely is the case at hand. Penelope has been in the Canting Crew now for some time. We would like to share with you her journey from a good moral family into the life she lives now. So Penelope, you're referred to as an Irish Toyle within the Canting Crew?
Yes.
But I don't hear any sense of Irish in your accent. Are you really Irish?
No, certainly not. I'm not Irish. That's just what people of my type in the Canting Crew are called. Certainly, I'm not a Clapperdogian. Now, those are people who were born into the crew. I just simply married into it, simply by the type of man that I married. He was part of, or maybe more closely associated with the crew, and so by marrying him, I became part of the crew.
So Penelope, you say you're married. What exactly do you mean by that? I know how the Canting Crews work.
I'm what's called an autumn mort. That means I was married in a church. Marriage in the crew is very unusual. Usually it's pretty loose and it changes on a whim who is with whom. As it says in one of our canting songs, marriage is a priestcraft which makes enjoyment less. But I much prefer it this way. I'm certainly not a doxywop like some of those other women out there.
Oh, heavens. So is this really the kind of life that you planned as you were growing up? I know of your family. Surely they didn't anticipate you being in this.
No, really not. Growing up, I had no idea that this is the life that I would be into. I knew of criminals, and I had talked to them. Some of them occasionally came to our home. After all, my father was the local beadle. Some might call him the night watchman or maybe the constable. There's also a new term out there that we call the thief taker. So sometimes these criminals would come to our home, maybe have a meal with us before my father sent them on to the wit. Now, mostly they were just people who were not bad people, but maybe more of in a bad situation. Now, I did know of some real criminals that were hung or hanged. My father would take us to Tyburn to the hangings often, just like everyone did. We were not wealthy, but we did have some.
Oh, a good hanging is a good moral lesson, I find. So, Penelope, what type of training did you have as a young lady? Surely you weren't trained in street selling.
Oh, I suppose the same as most of the young girls. I was raised with teachings in the household. We were not the type to become costermongers. We would buy from those costermongers or the street sellers. That's really the only contact we had with them. But my mother did teach me needlework and sewing. The idea was that I would be married off to someone and be able to do my own thing, or that I could do some needlework and then sell it off to those wealthier ladies or those stuffed muttons. But then occasionally my father would get a criminal and take him take him to the wit where he would come home with extra money. And when that happened, he would hire a tutor to teach my sister and I a little more about reading and writing so that we would have an opportunity in life.
Oh, that was good of him, I'm sure. But do you think that either of your parents really thought that you would end up in this condition?
Certainly not. In their world, people like this didn't exist. Outside of the wicked people that my father had to deal with, neither my mother or I ever thought or understood what would have happened or how my life would have turned out.
So Penelope, tell me, how did you meet your husband? Christopher Bodkin, if I'm correct.
I knew of Christopher. Everybody did, long even before I knew of him. He would come into town and he would spend time in the square singing or playing at some games. My father seemed to know him, or at least something of him and his background, but he never seemed to be bothered by Christopher. Unlike some of those that he called traveling people or gypsies. I found out later that my father knew of Christopher's real background, so he was not opposed to him as he might have been to others.
Well, I can clearly see how that you were exposed to this type of life, but how did you become involved in participating in it?
Accidentally, to be sure. Honestly, I was really surprised when Christopher started talking to me. I didn't think he was the type that would talk to me, but we started talking and he would tell me stories from the Canting Crew. Little by little, he would show me things that happened in the Canting Crew, teaching me little tricks or maybe little jobs that they had. Little by little, we started talking and walking, and as he would be sitting on the street doing music or games, I began to do small jobs such as just watching for my father to come by. And as I would see him, I would cry beef, and Christopher would put away those little games and then pick up his music and become the flying stationer, which was a very common street job. People were quite happy to have someone sitting on the street doing music. And then as time went along, I would do other little things, such as walking by the game as if I didn't notice, and he would call out to me. And I would go to his little shell and pea there and just pick one. I had no idea where the little green pea was, but sure enough, there it was. And as I walked on by, he'd hand me a coin. Naturally, the people watching thought it was an easy game. If I could win, they could win. So once I walked on by, they would go try, and naturally they never chose the pea. Only I could choose the pea, and that's how we worked together. That's a job that I call being the sweetener, getting people to come and bet their money so that we could make more money. I always seemed to win, and they didn't, and then I would just walk away and go about my business.
Oh my. So was it just Christopher that you worked with, or were there others there as well?
Once he came through, there were some other people with him. These were the ones that my father called the traveling people or the gypsies. I really didn't know they were part of his crew at first. Well, they're not really his crew because he's really not part of the crew. His job is called the sharper. He's kind of outside their world, but he works with them. They work together to achieve a common goal. The world of the sharper is really even shadier than the Canting Crew. He didn't want to be seen as needy, and they did. So they would make themselves needy so that they could do more begging on the streets.
So Penelope, were you aware that these were just really criminals, and you allowed yourself to be around them? Were they as rude and dirty as we've all come to expect?
Well, they were really much nicer than I expected. I mean, they did kind of smell, and they wore old clothes, and they begged from the people on the streets. But later I found out how much they really stole. And to me, they were really kind, mostly because I was the bum bailiff's daughter, but mostly because of Christopher, because of my association with him. They were kind to me. They were never rude or asked me for anything. Sometimes they've even offered to share with me, maybe some food or some drink. I certainly would never have done this of my own, but once I found out, they seemed quite nice.
Well, how long did this go on? Was Christopher always a part of what you were doing?
Not always, no. He came and went for quite a few years, and so did the rest of the crew, but not always together. Sometimes Christopher was with them, and sometimes he wasn't. But after they came to know I was close with him, they would always come and search me out. They would talk to me and started treating me more like a friend. They taught me their language and even how to steal, though sometimes I did dislike it. But it was a challenge. Everyone loves a challenge, especially someone who doesn't get out on the streets much. But I never really lived with them. They taught me the secrets of what to do, the ins and outs, how to steal and not get caught, little tricks of the trade. But occasionally I would go with them to another town, because we never did it in the town where my father was, because he would have known right away what was going on.
Are you saying then that sometimes you went out to other places?
Yes, sometimes we would go to other towns, but only when Christopher was there. I would go with him. I didn't like to go with just the crew. What I would do is go out into the town with my little bod basket, selling things, knickknacks or sewing notions, mostly from my basket, because that gave me a chance to look like I belonged on the street. While I was doing that, I would be Christopher's Bo Peep, looking out, being able to play least in sight when necessary. All the while, I would just really be Christopher's sweetener, waiting for the next person to come along and bet on the game.
Well, Penelope, what other types of deception did you learn while you were out with these criminals?
Oh, lots. I learned to dive into pockets. I was really good at that, probably because of my needlework and the tediousness of sewing with a needle. I also learned to pick locks. That was very clever. I could also be a Jenny Diver or a Kate, all while living with the constable in the same household. I even started making friends with all the little poor children around our streets. There's lots of little street children who maybe are homeless, or their parents might be street vendors. They have nothing to do on the street, so I would gather up all these little children and teach them how to take my procurements from place to place, usually to the stalling ken or the fence, to sell off those things. And once they brought me back the money, I would give them a few little coins to help them live on the streets. Children who do this job for me are called my Adam Tyler. These little Kinchin Morts and Kinchin Coves have nothing else to do, so I might as well teach them something that they can make a living at.
It's shocking. Oh, heavens. Little children as well? What is it that turned the corner, that made you walk away from your good life that you had?
Well, it was really pretty simple. I mean, Christopher finally realized that I was always around, especially when he was in town, and he finally had the good sense to ask me to marry him. I say good sense because had we not, and we'd just gone off together, well, as I explained before, in a Canting Crew, there was no such thing as marriage. They just shared alike. But being married in a church, well, that was different. That way we were truly husband and wife, and we could go from town to town together.
So, what's your life like now?
I now know all of Christopher's background, and it's really fun getting to go visit his family, and we get to put on pretty gowns and relax and enjoy and have someone to serve us. A little bit of the better things in life. But someday I do look forward to going back with him to take a position in the family business. But in the meantime, we travel, we have fun, we live and we laugh. I'm his wife, I'm his Bo Peep, but I'm also my own person, an Irish Toyle with my own little crew of street children. I never thought that this would be the life that I chose.
Are you sorry that you've made these choices?
No, I think if anything, maybe I'm a good influence on those vagrants, including Christopher. Politeness is important, and I can be polite. I have that upbringing. I live by my motto, though, don't bother yourself. I'll just get it myself. I married into the crew, and I'm glad I did. Well, that's all the time I have. I really need to get back to the streets and do the things that I do best.
Well, thank you so much, Penelope, for taking some time, and thank you for joining in. I would hope that you would look forward to my coming publication on the moral deficiencies of the Canting Crew. Thank you, Penelope. I have somewhere a coin for your trouble.
Oh, don't bother. I already helped myself.
Do you fancy a punk of a humour free that's kept by a fumbler of quality? You must rail at her keeper and tell her, pleasure's best charm is variety. Swear much fairer than all the town, try her and ply her when Colley's gone, dog her and jog her and meet her and treat her and kissed with 2 guineas and all's your own. If the heart of a man is depressed with care, the mist is dispelled when a woman appears. Like the notes of a fiddle, she sweetly, sweetly praises the spirits and charms our ears.